Hi, and welcome to this seventh video in our Proxmox series. So as for our Proxmox series, this is going to be probably the last video that we're going to be doing. We are going to be actually creating and deleting VMs through the API using PowerShell. But this won't be the actual last Proxmox video. We're actually going to be rolling into just more using PowerShell to control our Proxmox. So although it's still going to be Proxmox, it's going to be more focused around the PowerShell code around it. I just want to give these videos, especially for the Proxmox series, just to get people's feet wet in the automation and using the API of Proxmox after doing everything through the GUI. I believe just exploring the API will just let you understand that system a little bit better and be able to automate it and be able to just reproduce, especially with the creation of VMs, being able to reproduce your VMs in a very consistent fashion to make sure that they're always made the exact same way and make sure that, when you're clicking through it, you're not forgetting something or accidentally choosing the wrong option. This just confirms that consistency across all your VMs created. So let's go ahead, let's get started here. So I actually have our Proxmox window open here so we can actually see that we do have 3 VMs. We also have a template, but we're going to be creating the VM from scratch. We're not going to be cloning the VM through the API route, although there is an API route for that, and we're going to explore that more once we actually do a deeper dive with the PowerShell exploring Proxmox. We're going to be creating functions, so we're going to be developing a lot more of a stronger API use case through that PowerShell Proxmox series. So be sure to tune in for those videos. We're going to be going over again how to create a VM in those, but it's going to be more creating a function. This way you have a lot more flexibility in creating those VMs later on. So let's go ahead and let's actually just get started here. So we're going to be going based on what we created last week, which is our API token. So we're going to be using the API token to actually create and delete our VM. So we're actually just going to copy paste some code from last week here, and we're going to paste that into our code from this week. So just a quick little explanation for people that haven't watched last week's video. I do suggest you go check that out because it does show you how to create the API token. But here we actually load in our API token from our CLI.xml file. We have our Proxmox server IP address. We put in our header, which includes our API token. And then in here, we can actually just go ahead, make sure that we can actually fetch that data back. And we can actually see that we are getting the version of our Proxmox instance back. So that is perfect. So we can actually just go ahead and remove these last ones here. So all we really want is just that API token loading in the Proxmox IP and creating that header with the API token that we will need to actually authenticate against our Proxmox and create that VM. So the first thing that we actually need to do to create our VM is, of course, set up our URI. And that you can get that, again, in the last video, I posted in the description, the API interface, which will actually show you all the different routes that you can actually use in Proxmox. But for us, we're going to be creating a VM today. So ours is going to be https:// we're going to put a variable wrapper in here, and this is where we're going to put our Proxmox server : so we're going to specify the port 8006 /API2 /JSON/nodes. Now this is where you're actually going to put in your Proxmox cluster name, or node name, I should actually say. So here we actually had a very interesting way of doing this. The last time we actually had a base URI and we had the ability to pick up our target node here. So if we actually just copy this code here, and we're actually just going to put this in right here. We're going to remove this commented out code here. So actually, if we just use this, we will actually see that our target node is Promox, because I did do a typo there when I was trying to type out Proxmox. So it's going to be Promox here, or what we can actually do is use that target node variable, which is just going to help us stay a little bit more consistent and avoid typos. And then we're going to type in the QEMU, and this is going to be our URL. Now, what we can actually even do is, because we have this base URI here that we created last week, we can actually remove this entire first section and just put in the base URI here. And then what we can actually do, now that we have our URI, we can actually go ahead and put in our data that we want for our VM. So let's go ahead and let's just create a variable called VM data here. And we're going to make that equal to a hash table. And this is where we're going to have to put in a lot of information. I'm actually going to show you guys a hack at how to do this very easily in your own environment with your own settings that you would want. But first, let's just go ahead and let's create it from scratch here. So we're going to put in VMID. Now I'm going to put in the VMID 105. Now, of course, when we actually do our Proxmox PowerShell tutorial, we would actually probably want to get a list of the VMIDs that already exist and make sure that this doesn't exist when we go to create it. But that's just a side note there. We're going to want to put in the name. I'm going to put in this name as just test VM dash PS, just for PowerShell there. We're going to put in the memory is equal to 2048. So we're going to be assigning 2 gigs of memory to this machine. We are also going to want to make sure that the CPU is going to equal x86-64-v2-AES. And that's just for my environment. Again, I'm going to be showing you guys how to actually determine what you guys would actually have to put in for this in your own environment very, very easily. We're going to put the amount of sockets here to 1. Cores, we're going to set that to 2. And then what we're going to want to do is the OS type is going to be a string, and that string is going to be L26. And that just sets it for, so let me just go ahead and show you guys. That will actually set it. If we go and create a VM here, and we just go OS, that will actually set the Linux version to the 6.x-2.6 kernel. All right, so let's just go back into our PowerShell here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the SCSI HW, so the SCSI hardware here. We're going to put that to the vert io-scsi-PCI, and then the SCSI 0, so the SCSI interface, we are going to set that to the local-LVM. We want to make it 32 gigs, so it's going to be :32. We're going to put comma discard on to make sure that it is just trimmed there, so that's going to be good. And then we want to make sure that our NUMA is set to 0. We want the QEMU agent to be enabled. Again, you still have to install that and enable it on your actual server itself, but we just want to make sure that we actually set up the agent there just to make sure that it's turned on. And then we are going to put the net 0, so our network interface is going to be equal to the vert IO, and we're going to make sure that that is bridge equals VMBR0 in our situation. This should be the default for your environment. And then we're going to put the IDE2. So this is going to be our CD-ROM drive here. We're going to put that equal to local:ISO/ and then for me, it's going to be the name of my ISO that I have in here. And just to let you guys know where you guys can find that is if you go into your local Proxmox here and then go into ISO images, you're going to want to pick the name that you have in here. So this is where renaming your ISOs when you go to download them is very useful. As you can see, I did not rename the Ubuntu one when we downloaded it here. So it is a little bit of a longer name. Luckily, I already have it typed out here and I have it in my clipboard. So I'm just going to put that as the Ubuntu-24.04.2-live-server-AMD64.ISO. And then we're going to put a comma there, and we're going to put media equals CD-ROM. And that should be all good there. So we have our VM data. Now we have to go ahead and we have to call that API route. So we're going to create a variable called response. And we're going to make that equal invoke-rest method. Our URI is going to be our URI variable. Our headers is going to be our header variable, which is going to be that API token. Our content type is important here. We're going to want to make sure to have that as application/JSON. Our method here is going to be post. And then our body, what I like to do is I don't like to convert the body to JSON in the actual script. All we can actually do is just do a JSON here in a variable wrapper. So once you have the variable wrapper, you're going to put in your VM data here, and we're going to pipe that to convert to -JSON. And I like to always put a depth here. I usually put a depth of 100. Of course, we don't need 100. It just has a depth of 2 here. But just in case, depending on what you typically do. And we're going to skip the certificate check. And then we're going to go ahead and we're just going to do a response dot data here right underneath. So let's go ahead and let's just run this entire code here. And let's go ahead and let's check out our environment. So here we can actually see our test VM-PS here. And if we actually go ahead and click on it, we can actually see that it has 1 socket, 2 cores. It has the CPU that we have set up. It has the SCSI VirtIO controller. It has our CD-ROM loaded, and everything there is good. If we go to the console here, we can actually start this, and it'll take us through that setup. So of course it doesn't install the Ubuntu. That is why typically you would like to kind of do that template like we did a couple videos ago and use that template and clone that template. But of course, it is very useful to just know how to create a VM this way. If you do need to create a new base VM to be able to create a new template, if you always want it to be created the same way, using that code, using that API route will save you a bunch of possible mistakes of having to click through a bunch of screens and selecting a wrong driver or a wrong hard drive size, the wrong amount of CPUs, or anything like that. This way you can just really foolproof your deployments. Now, of course, you can also remove a VM pretty easily. But before we go ahead and remove that VM, I want to show you guys a very easy way to get what you need to put into the body of that request. Because I know one of the questions is probably like, well, what if I want a Windows machine with the Windows ISO? What OS type do I put in there? What if I don't want the SCSI? What if I want a different CPU? What if I don't want the disk guard? What if I want other options? What if I want a bigger hard drive? Anything like that, all these questions will be answered with a very, very simple method here. So let's just go into our web UI here, and we are actually going to go ahead and click on these 3 little dots, and we are going to do more tools, and we are going to do developer tools. Now, again, another way to do the developer tools, of course, is Control-Shift-I. You can also use F12 as well. So if I do F12 here, although it is Edge, so I don't think F12 works, but if you do F12 on Firefox, it'll bring up the developer tools, as well as I believe Google Chrome is F12 as well. But if we are using Edge, sometimes it is a little bit different depending on the browser. But once you have your developer tools open, you're going to want to go into the network tab here, and you're going to see that we have a bunch of stuff in here. Now, we're going to want to just clear that for now, and you're going to want to keep clearing it basically as we go through until the last step. But you can actually just let it go, and we're going to clear it before we do that last step here. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to click on Create VM. So here we can leave our VM ID as 104. It doesn't really matter. And we can actually say test here VM dash YouTube. This way you guys will know right away that it is actually what we want. And we're going to click on next here. And we want the ISO. We're going to still pick Ubuntu in this case. And we're going to make sure that we keep everything here is the exact same. And then we're going to click on next here. And we want to pick the QEMU agent. We want to make sure that it is the VirtIO SCSI here. We have the disks here, so we can actually change this disk. Let's just change it to 50. Let's have the discard here. And let's also do a SSD emulation just to see some differences here. We're going to put it to 2 cores. We're also going to change the CPU here. We're just going to change that to host. And we're going to click next. And the memory, let's go ahead and let's put that to 4 gigs, which I believe is 4096. I'm just going to make sure that is correct here. Let me just open up a quick little calculator. Yeah, it is 4096. And we can click on next. And the network is going to stay the exact same there. So we're going to click on next. Now, before we click on finish here, we're just going to want to clear out this network log here. And then we're going to click finish. And then all we're going to do is we're going to do stop recording. And then we should have something that looks like QEMU here. And for us, it does have a status of 200. Now, I do prefer usually using the developer tools in Firefox. It would usually say also like post here, so it would actually give you what the method is, which is kind of handy. But if you just click on it, you can also see that it is a post here as well. And you can see all your details about that request. And what's nice is in the payload option, you will actually see this is all the data that we sent through. So we have our VM ID, name, IDE2, the OS type, the SCSI hardware, the agent, the SCSI 0, sockets, cores, NUMA, the CPU, the memory, and the net 0. So again, if we actually just do view source here, you would also see that as well. But just simply the form data will give you that as well. And I believe that this is just going to be the preview and then the response saying that it was created successfully. But this is where that payload is really, really handy. Now, I actually prefer Firefox just on this machine. I actually don't have Firefox installed. But usually Firefox would actually give you a really, really nice like you can easily copy paste this in. But this will actually just give you all the interesting, at least it gives you the names of the different key value pairs that you need and the value that it should be. So you can easily copy the values here. So everything is pretty nice. And then again, you can view the source. In this case, I don't think the view source really helps us, but at least you can easily see that. So again, if we actually just did another one here, so if we did another create VM, let's go ahead, let's just clear this. And we're just going to do create VM and we're going to do test Windows here. Now, I'm not going to be following the best practices here. I'm just going to be putting in just randomness just to show you guys. And we're going to add the additional drive for VirtIO drivers. We're going to put in the VirtIO driver ISO here. And we're going to put the system. And we're going to put the VirtIO SCSI here. We're going to enable the QEMU agent right away. TPM storage, we're going to put that as local LVM for the EFI status. Click on next. We're going to want to make sure that we just do the write back, do the discard, the SSD emulation. Click on next, and then the type, that's fine. We're going to do 2 cores. 4096 for the memory, that is fine. And then right before we hit confirm, we're just going to start recording that network log. We're going to send that in there. We're just going to stop it. And then if we look at our QEMU option here in the payload, you can actually see that we have some new options here. So you can actually see the IDE2 and the IDE0. Now, what I would do in my code is we already know that we usually have to change the IDE0 and the IDE2 around. You're going to want the IDE0 to be the Windows Server ISO, and then the IDE2 to be the VirtIO driver. So you can easily put that in your code and fix that. Um, Also, you have your machine is Cube35. You have your BIOS here as well. You have your TPM state, your EFI disks. So you have a lot of extra options, and you also have the boot order. So instead of changing these two around, you could also just change your boot order from SCSI 0 IDE 2 IDE 0 Net 0 to SCSI 0 IDE 0 IDE 2 and then net 0. Um, Actually, the IDE2 seems like it's in the right spot this time. So that's actually neat. So it should work. If not, you guys can always try it and then just manipulate it. But again, this is the easiest way that I know of to really be able to create that body, that JSON that you need to create a VM the exact way that you need it. So if you actually walk through the GUI portion, create one VM exactly as you want it, and you want to be able to reproduce that, you just grab that payload information and you can easily codify that in PowerShell or Python or any programming languages you want and interact with that API. So let's go back to our code here and let's just see how we can actually then go ahead and delete that VM here. So what we're going to do, of course, is we are going to create our URI, which for us, once again, is we can actually just copy paste this. It's going to be the base URI. It's going to be our nodes. It's going to be our target node, QEMU, and then here it's going to be the VM ID that we're going to want. So let's go ahead and let's just delete the 105, which is the one that we created through PowerShell here. And we're going to do a response again. And we're going to make that equal to invoke REST method. The URI is going to be URI. The headers is going to be header. The content type is going to be application/JSON. The method here is going to be delete. And then we want to make sure that we do the skip certificate check in our example here. And if we just go ahead, we just open it, we're going to make sure that our 105 is technically still there. Let's go ahead and let's just make sure that it is turned off. Now, of course, you can turn it off through API routes, but again, we're just going to keep this really simple. We're just going to make it for the delete and the creation for this video here, and we're going to be showing you a lot more again in that PowerShell Proxmox series. And we're going to be able to delete a lot of VMs here. So we're going to delete the 104, the 105, and the 106. So let's just go ahead. Let's delete the 105 here. And then let's delete the 104 and then the 106. Now, again, you would actually be able to get the list of VMs, which we've seen that last week, and you would know exactly what VM IDs to delete. You can prompt the user to pick which VM they actually want to delete. But if we go back here, all of those are gone. We can actually see in our task list here, we destroyed the 105, the 104, and the 106. So everything there is good. Hopefully you guys learned something new today for managing your VMs in Proxmox using PowerShell, especially the creation and the removal. We've seen a bit last week as well, just how to fetch the list of VMs and see the different statuses of our VMs as well. In the next few videos, like I said, we're going to be automating a lot more in Proxmox through PowerShell. It's going to be more focusing on the PowerShell aspect more than the Proxmox, but it will be interacting with our Proxmox instance. So you will still need that to be spun up, but we're going to be seeing how we can boot up our machines, reboot our machines, shut down the VMs. We're going to be seeing how we can clone a template as well. So there's going to be a lot more that we're going to be able to do through the API routes. Be sure to stay tuned for that. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell to be notified when that video comes out. And if you haven't already, hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. And if you want to see anything specific in the next videos, please let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll do my best to perform those. And I will see you guys on the next video. Have a good one.